Steel Mills. T-800 Kai brought John Connor and Richard inside, but was stopped by workers as soon as they entered. T-800 Guy didn't waste any words and pointed his gun at them and said coldly, "Get out of here." The group of workers dropped their tools and fled without saying a word. At this time, T-1000 also rushed over. T-800 opened fire directly at T-1000. The bullets smashed T-1000's body into pieces. But even so, T-1000 only took a few seconds to completely heal himself. "Shoot him into the boiler, that's the only way to kill him," Richard shouted. But just as he finished shouting, T-1000 immediately moved away from the boiler. However, this did not mean that he had no means of long-range attack. He raised the pistol that had never fired a bullet and pointed it at John Connor. Upon seeing this, T-800 Guy immediately came in front of him and blocked all the bullets. Not only that, he also ran towards T-1000, and the two began to fight directly. However, T-1000's liquefaction ability was too abnormal, and soon T-800 Guy was beaten to a state of disarray. For this reason, Richard had no choice but to take action. If he didn't take action, he was really afraid that T-800 Guy would be killed. Richard quickly reloaded and then fired. The bullet made T-1000 stagger. T-800 Guy took this opportunity to take action and knocked T-1000 back with one punch after another. Just when Richard was about to run out of bullets, Li Qingyue and the others finally appeared. Li Qingyue kicked T-1000 away and kicked it into the boiler. The high-temperature molten iron fused with T-1000, making it impossible for him to regain his human form. As more and more ordinary metals were fused, T-1000 was finally completely destroyed. "It's really thanks to you this time," Sarah Connor said breathlessly. "No need to thank me. If you really want to stop the birth of Skynet, go find Moss Dyson. Because the body of the T-800 we killed for the first time was obtained by the government, and Skynet was created with inspiration in the chip. So if you want to stop the future, you must destroy the arms and chips in Moss Dyson's company. There is one more thing, that is, Skynet not only sent out one T-800, but several, so don't think that you are safe and let him stay to protect you and your son." Li Qingyue pointed at T-800 Guy and said. After saying that, Li Qingyue and the others left. When Sarah Connor came to her senses, she ran out. She had a lot of questions to ask him, but when she ran outside, she didn't see Li Qingyue and the others. Even the car they drove was still there. Sarah Connor looked around in confusion. She really didn't know how they disappeared. Because Li Qingyue and the others had already returned to the office, they didn't waste long this time. "How is it? Is this your first time going to another world to carry out a commission?" Li Qingyue asked curiously. "It's okay, I don't feel anything." Walter shrugged and said, "That's right, but don't worry. When you encounter commissions from other worlds, you will probably encounter all kinds of strange worlds. Then your worldview will be refreshed." "Then when will such a world appear?" Walter asked. "You ask me this? I don't know either. It depends on its mood." Li Qingyue said helplessly. Richard and Walter looked at each other, shook their heads, and went home. Li Qingyue also sat back in his boss chair, but because Tom and Jerry were not there, the office seemed unusually deserted. Dividing line. On the other side, in Tony's beach villa, Tony looked at Tom and Jerry in front of him with a depressed look. He had just tried various methods, but none of them could make them pass out, including various anesthetics, but none of them could make them pass out, as if they were completely immune to drugs. "Well, did Jarvis figure out anything?" "I'm sorry, sir. Based on my analysis, they are just ordinary cats and mice." "Is this normal?" Tony picked up the sword beside him and slashed at the two kids. The two kids ate frantically without even trying to dodge. As a result, the sword cut the two kids in half, but the broken parts soon disappeared. "I'm sorry, sir, that's my analysis." Jarvis' helpless voice sounded. "Who the hell are you?" Tony looked at the two of them helplessly. During this period, Tony tried many ways to kill them, such as dropping heavy objects on them, but either a big lump appeared on their heads and the pain went away after a while, or they were smashed into a puddle, which was even more outrageous. They would recover the moment the heavy object left. Or you feed them poison, and they just open their mouths and spit out a puff of green smoke with a skull and two crossbones in it, and that's it. Of course, there are all kinds of other ways to die. Not only that, their every move constantly refreshes Tony's worldview, especially his actions that violate the laws of physics. For example, when he drops them from a high altitude, they flap their hands like birds and fly up. Another thing is that when Tom was chasing Jerry, Jerry was clearly hanging in the air, but he just didn't fall down. It was not until he realized that he was hanging in the air that Jerry fell down. These scenes all shocked Tony. In the end, in order to protect his science, Tony had no choice but to send the two children back. So when Li Qingyue saw Tony, he was really scared. Tony's eye sockets were sunken at this time, and his dark circles were so heavy that even foundation couldn't cover them. His stubble was even so much that it made people feel sick. "What's wrong with you?" Li Qingyue asked in confusion. "I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out." Tony didn't explain, but just kept repeating this sentence. After leaving Tom and Jerry, he hurried away. "What did you do to him?" Li Qingyue stared at Tom and Jerry. Twitter. After the two children's continuous explanation, Li Qingyue reluctantly believed that Tony's appearance was not caused by them. "Okay, now that I've sent it back to you, just stay quiet. If you dare to destroy my house again, your dried fish and cheese will all be confiscated." After leaving these harsh words, Li Qingyue fell asleep in the boss chair. Tom and Jerry continued their fight, but this time they seemed to be fighting very cautiously and did not dare to make any noise at all. This led to the two kids attacking each other. They wanted to scream in pain, but they had to cover their mouths, or they conjured up a glass bottle and trapped all the screams inside. Soon, the ground was covered with glass bottles, filled with their screams. Gradually, they all got tired, and Jerry had to stop and raise the white flag to show his surrender. Seeing this, Tom stopped chasing Jerry. The two kids returned to their sofa, collapsed on it, and slowly flowed down like liquid. Hell's Kitchen. Richard stayed in his room. At this time, Richard was drawing out the method of training gunfighting in his mind bit by bit, because this involved a lot of data science, statistics, geometry, various gun techniques, fighting techniques, sword techniques, etc. The amount of knowledge involved in it is simply not something that Richard can organize by himself. After all, he is just a child. Even if he has all the knowledge of gunfighting in his mind, he is simply unable to fully display it. It's like a child who has never been to school, but knows a method of cultivating immortality. When others know about it, they want this child to teach him, but the child has never learned it and cannot read at all. He doesn't know how to teach them, so he can only teach them orally. For example, how to absorb spiritual energy. From here to here, he can't even tell the meridians. Richard is in such a situation now. He wants to record the complete gunfighting skills, but his knowledge reserves do not support him. For this reason, he can only ask Walter for a can of improved version of NZT. With this thing, he believes that he can learn the knowledge needed for gunfighting in a very short time. But this is too boring and difficult for a child. After all, an ordinary person would not dare to say that he has fully mastered a subject in his entire life, let alone those involved in gunfighting. Seeing that his brain was about to explode, Richard had to find Walter for help. After learning about Richard's needs, Walter directly lent Gaia to him. With Gaia's help, Richard only took a few days to record the training methods of gunfighting. In fact, Richard didn't want to seek Walter's help, because he wanted to give this method to Kingpin, so he wanted to complete it alone, but he overestimated himself and had to ask Walter for help. Of course, Richard did not gain nothing. He learned geometry, gunmanship, fighting skills, and swordsmanship. After all, these are the most likely things to be learned quickly in a short period of time. Holding the USB flash drive, Richard came to the Wilson building and entered Kingpin's office under the guidance of security guards. "Dad, happy birthday. This is my birthday present for you." Richard handed the USB drive to Jean Bing, who took it and asked curiously, "What's in it?" "Dad, why don't you just open it and see for yourself?" Jean inserted the USB drive into the computer, then opened the folder inside. He first clicked on the video and saw the effect of gunfighting and the systematic training method from the video. "Is this true?" Jean Bing asked in surprise. "Dad, it's true. I know how to fight with a gun." "Can you show me?" "Then Dad will get some people over and some BBs and guns. But the guns should be smaller, because I can't hold a larger gun in my hands." Kingpin nodded, then said something to his butler. After a while, 7 men in black suits walked in, each of them holding a pistol. The leader handed Richard 2 miniature pistols. Richard took it and quickly checked the gun to see if there was anything wrong. He then checked the ammunition and confirmed it was BB bullets. He said, "Treat me as you train. Treat me like a target. When the bell rings, shoot. Don't hesitate." "Yes, young master." Several people responded, then surrounded Richard in a semicircle, waiting for the bell to ring. Kingpin also glanced at the clock beside him. As the 3 needles overlapped and the clock rang, Richard took the lead in moving, dodging the bullets and fighting back at the same time with a graceful body movement. Sometimes he even shot without looking at the enemy. 5 seconds later, the 7 people looked at Richard in disbelief. Their bodies were covered with marks from BB bullets of various colors, but Richard was clean without any marks on his body. Dad, you've seen it too. Gunfighting is really useful, but this gun still doesn't work. Their firing rate is still too slow. It should be faster. This way, it will be more suitable for gunfighting. I understand, Richard. I like your gift very much. With this, my empire can continue to expand. Jean Bing said with a rare smile. Then I'll leave and not disturb you from working. Remember to come back early in the evening. Mom has prepared a gift for you. Kingpin nodded, and Richard left the Wilson building. Kingpin stood by the window watching Richard's departing figure at the bottom of the building and couldn't help but smile. Form a special team and train them according to this training method. Remember, they don't have to be the strongest, but they must be loyal enough. Do you understand? Jean Bing said with his back to the butler. Yes, sir. The butler bowed slightly and then took away the USB drive. After Richard returned to the villa, he said something to Vanessa and then ran to the office. Teacher, today is my dad's birthday. Remember to come to the party tonight. Is anyone coming? Li Qingyue asked with a yawn. Just the people from our firm, my parents, and maybe the housekeeper and Bullseye. After all, as you know, my dad's status is quite special, so there won't be many people attending his birthday party. We are all familiar people. In that case, just remember to tell me when the banquet starts. By the way, notify Walter as well. Li Qingyue waved his hand. I understand, teacher. It was soon evening. After Vanessa prepared the food for tonight's party, Richard hurried to inform Li Qingyue and the others. As Li Qingyue and the others entered the garden of the villa, Jean Bing also came back, accompanied only by Bullseye and his butler. After they greeted each other, Vanessa sang happy birthday with everyone, and then under Vanessa's gaze, Jean Bing cut the cake. The group looked like an ordinary family having a birthday party, and their true identities were completely unrecognizable. Suddenly, Connor sensed something and came behind Kingpin and said calmly, "An uninvited guest has arrived." Kingpin was stunned for a moment, then handed the cut cake in his hand to Connor, and looked outside. He saw a car appearing outside the street, and on a nearby high-rise building, a group of ninjas were hiding in the dark. Do you need me to do it? Bullseye asked as he ate the beef on the toothpick. No need, they don't dare to cause trouble at this time. Let's wait until the party is over. Jean Bing said softly, pouring a glass of wine for several people. Except for Vanessa, everyone present basically sensed the group of ninjas outside, but none of them exposed it. Everyone sat in the garden, chatting, eating delicious food, drinking wine, and enjoying themselves very comfortably. It was around 11 o'clock in the evening when Vanessa felt sleepy. She yawned and said, "Yawn, dear, I'm sleepy. I'm going back to bed. Leave these in the garden. I'll clean them up tomorrow morning." After saying that, Vanessa kissed Kingpin, then patted Richard on the head as she passed by him and went upstairs. As soon as Vanessa left, the atmosphere among the crowd suddenly changed. Li Qingyue said to Jean Bing, "If you need anything, just come to us. As long as the price is right, we'll be fine." After saying that, Li Qingyue left with his employees except Richard. After they left, the car slowly arrived at the door of the villa, and an old woman with an Asian face walked out. She came to the door gracefully with a cane in her hand. "Kingpin, aren't you welcome to come in? Mrs. Gao, what are you doing here?" Jean Bing looked at Mrs. Gao coldly with an expressionless face. "Mrs. Gao, what do you want to do?" Jean Bing sat in his yard and asked Mrs. Gao with an expressionless face. "Jean Bing, is that woman your wife?" When Kingpin heard what Mrs. Gao said, his eyes became fierce. Richard even fired directly, but the bullet was blocked by the ninja wearing a blue ninja suit next to Mrs. Gao. "Be careful with your words. If you dare to lay hands on my mother, I will do nothing but keep an eye on you every day," Richard said with a dark face. When the blue ninja in front of Mrs. Gao heard this, he immediately became unhappy and rushed directly towards Richard. Richard didn't waste any words seeing this, and the two of them started fighting. Facing the blue ninja, Richard was not at a disadvantage and was even able to suppress the blue ninja. Seeing this, Mrs. Gao quickly said, "That's enough. I have no ill intentions. I just came to discuss a business with you." "You have no ill intentions? If you have no ill intentions, you shouldn't come here." Jean Bing finally stood up, and his huge body brought unparalleled pressure. Time is urgent, and there's nothing I can do, but I can assure you that I really don't have any ill will towards her. I don't believe your promise. Jean Bing said coldly. Mrs. Gao said a word helplessly. Keel. After hearing this, Jean Bing's eyes lit up, and he said to Richard, Richard, go back to sleep. You have to go to school tomorrow. Dad. Believe me, they won't do anything rash. Even if they do, Boss Lee and the others are right beside them. Seeing this, Richard could only reluctantly put away his gun and turned away. Then Jean Bing ordered Bullseye to ask someone to clean up the place, and then Jean Bing followed Mrs. Gao away. Richard looked through the window at the people leaving and couldn't help but snorted coldly. Mrs. Gao obviously felt this and turned around to look at Richard with a smug smile on her face. This made Richard so angry that he almost pulled out a gun to shoot her on the spot. At the same time, on the other side, a hammer-like meteorite suddenly fell in Mexico. The meteorite looked small, but it was very heavy. How heavy was it? The group of people who discovered the meteorite tried various methods but could not move it at all. Then the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered the meteorite and dispatched troops to build a temporary base around it. However, they were also unable to shake the meteorite in front of them, and their machines were unable to detect what it was made of. There was no other way but for S.H.I.E.L.D. to seek outside help, and the first one was Tony. After Tony learned that an unknown meteorite had landed on Earth, he set off immediately. However, even he could not detect what material this thing was made of. Jarvis could only detect that the meteorite contained terrible power. Seeing that Tony also couldn't figure out the origin of the meteorite, they had no choice but to seek Li Qingyue's help. Hoping that this so-called all-knowing intelligence dealer could know the origin of the meteorite, Natasha appeared at the door as soon as Li Qingyue's office opened. Yon, is there something wrong? Why are you knocking on the door so early? Li Qingyue said while yawning. Are you still selling intelligence now? Natasha asked. Yes, but unlike before, you need to submit your questions as a commission, and each question costs $100,000, no bargaining. Good. Li Qingyue quickly invited Natasha in and placed the parchment scroll on the table. After Natasha went through the formalities, she took out the picture of the meteorite and asked, What is this? Li Qingyue saw the meteorite in the picture and answered directly, Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Thor's hammer? Are you sure you're not kidding me? No kidding, the question has been answered, please pay. Natasha gave Li Qingyue a check with a sullen face, then she took the parchment scroll on the table and went through the process again in a bad mood. Tell me how this Thor's hammer was made. Natasha thought for a while before asking. After hearing this, Li Qingyue couldn't help but praise. As expected of the Black Widow, she is indeed smart. In that case, I will tell you. The hammerhead of Thor's hammer was forged within a fading star, while the handle is made from the wood of the World Tree. It was forged by the Dwarf King of Nidave. Furthermore, Thor's hammer is enchanted with Odin's spell, preventing anyone who isn't recognized by Thor from lifting it. Do you have any further questions? After getting the information she needed, Natasha threw down the check, turned around and left quickly. As she left, she quickly turned on her phone and contacted Coulson in Mexico, telling him the origin of Thor's hammer. At the same time, she combined some information from Norse mythology and wondered whether Thor, the god of thunder, had also landed nearby with Thor's hammer. With the information provided by Natasha, Coulson quickly found out the strangers who had recently appeared in the town. There were only 4 of them in total. 2 men and 2 women, namely Jane Foster, Eric Shalvig, Daisy Louise, and a blonde man about whom no information can be found. Through facial comparison, this blonde man has never appeared anywhere in the world. He seemed to appear suddenly. His date of birth and age are unknown, so Coulson has reason to believe that he is Thor. He just doesn't know what kind of changes he has encountered that have caused him to become an ordinary person now. For this reason, when Coulson learned that the blonde man was attacking the base, he directly informed all members to let him in. However, when the blonde man went in and grasped Thor's hammer tightly, what no one expected was that the man did not lift Thor's hammer. Coulson frowned as he watched this scene. After a long while, Coulson finally gave the order, "Drive him away." "Yes, sir." Everyone rushed forward and drove the blonde man away. A researcher approached Coulson and whispered, "Sir, that man might really be Thor. Just now, when he touched Thor's hammer, the energy within it reached its peak, but for some reason, it suddenly weakened and eventually returned to calm. Can you find the reason?" The researcher shook his head, and Coulson immediately asked him to leave. At this moment, Coulson thought of the information provided by Natasha. He stood in the room and looked at Thor's hammer in the yard and muttered, No one who is not recognized by Thor's hammer can lift it. Did Odin abandon Thor? This is impossible. Why is it? Is he really the god of thunder? In a small border town in Mexico, a blond man was sitting in a car with a sad expression. In the car, there were two women and an old man besides him. Jane, he looks stupid to me. Why don't we just leave him here? A woman whispered in another woman's ear. Daisy. Okay, that's okay, doctor. Can we go eat first? I'm hungry. Okay, let's go eat first. At this time, the woman named Jane was still comforting the man sitting in the passenger seat, but the man seemed to be unable to hear anything and still looked sad. When they arrived outside the restaurant, the man seemed to smell the food and said, "Are you guys going to eat?" "Oh my, you finally spoke. We thought you were really stupid." Daisy complained. Daisy. Daisy shrugged her shoulders, and Jane quickly walked to the man and whispered, "Yes, let's go eat first, and then we can talk about your things after dinner." "My business." Jane nodded, then took them in and ordered a set meal for each of them. After they had eaten and drunk their fill, they returned to the house. "May I have your name?" "Thor Odinson," the man answered truthfully. "Thor Odinson? You're not trying to say you're the god of thunder?" "I used to be the god of thunder, but now I am just an ordinary Asgardian." Thor hung his head sadly when he said this. "You are really Thor." Jane was a little surprised. Then they talked about the situation in Asgard and Thor's age. However, they were surprised to learn that Thor was more than 2,000 years old. However, considering the mythology, it seemed normal. Little did they know that while they were chatting, a colorful light appeared outside the town, and 4 people walked out of the light. They were wearing medieval armor and holding cold weapons as they swaggered towards the town. Their appearance also alarmed Coulson and others. "Hawkeye, lead a team and see what's going on." A figure in the tree jumped down, nodded, and then walked towards the town with a fully armed team. Thor, who was originally planning to take a rest, suddenly heard a commotion outside. He looked through the window in confusion and suddenly found a familiar person. He rushed out and grabbed the person, but unexpectedly his hand passed directly over the person's body. "My dear brother, do you know what you have done? Loki, help me." Loki shook his head and told Thor that Odin died because he was too angry. When Thor learned that Odin died early because of his problem, he sat on the ground in despair, but the next person who appeared interrupted his plan. "Thor, don't believe Loki, he is lying to you. The God King has just entered a sleeping state. He is fine." A fat man shouted loudly. "Volstagg, why are you here?" Loki looked at them with contempt and then disappeared. Then the 4 of them came to Thor and explained the whole story. It turned out that Loki had obtained the Spear of Eternity during Odin's sleep and sat on the throne of the God King. At the same time, he wanted to use the Rainbow Bridge to smash them. Hearing this, Thor was furious and was about to summon Thor's hammer to stop Loki's plan, but then he remembered that he seemed unable to summon Thor's hammer. At this moment, the Rainbow Bridge appeared again not far away, but this time it was not Odin, Frigga, or Loki who came, but Odin's armor, the destroyer, but the one who controlled the destroyer was Loki. "Loki, don't make the same mistake again," Thor shouted. But Loki controlled the destroyer, stood up straight and looked at the 5 people in front of him. Suddenly, his mask opened and an orange laser shot towards them. The 5 people quickly dodged and used their weapons to attack the destroyer. But unfortunately, the attacks of several people could not cause any damage to Doomsday. Even after the team led by Hawkeye arrived, they were of no help at all. Seeing that his friend was about to be killed, Thor immediately blocked Doomsday's way. "Loki, I know you hate me. If killing me can make you let them go, then go ahead." After hearing this, Loki controlled Doomsday to stop in front of Thor. Looking at the stopped Doomsday, Thor thought that Loki was sentimental, but the next second Loki slapped Thor away with a slap. Thor crashed into the wall and was covered by bricks and stones, with only one arm exposed. Jane ran over and grabbed Thor's hand and shouted, "Thor, no! Thor, wake up!" But no matter how she called, Thor did not move. Even the 3 Asgardian warriors and Sif looked ahead helplessly. At this moment, Jane suddenly felt her fingers numb and subconsciously loosened her hand. She found that a small arc of electricity appeared on Thor's palm. She stood up in surprise. Everyone also felt something and immediately looked at Thor. The next second, a sound of breaking air was heard. Everyone looked at the sky and a flash of lightning rushed towards Thor. Thor burst out with powerful momentum, and the bricks and stones on his body were blown away. Then scaly armor and cloak appeared on his body, and many lightning bolts struck him, but these lightning bolts were to replenish the divine power that was vacant in Thor's body. Seeing this, Loki immediately controlled the destroyer to attack Thor, but Thor, who had regained his divine power, smashed the destroyer into pieces with just one blow. Looking at the fragments on the ground, Thor ignored them and came to Jane and hugged her. After a long moment, Thor finally let go of Jane and whispered, "Jane, I need Asgard to deal with Loki. Wait until I get back, okay?" "Okay, go and come back soon." Thor nodded, then brought the 3 Asgardian warriors and Sif to the wilderness and began calling Heimdall, because Heimdall was responsible for opening the Rainbow Bridge, but no matter how they called, the Rainbow Bridge did not respond. Thor seemed to know that Heimdall seemed to have met with an accident, but now only Heimdall or Odin could open the Rainbow Bridge. "Heimdall, I know you can see it. You must open the Rainbow Bridge, otherwise no one can stop Loki." Thor roared. The next second, the Rainbow Bridge appeared, covering the 5 people. When the Rainbow Bridge disappeared, the 5 people also disappeared. No one knew what happened in Asgard after that. Coulson and the others packed up and prepared to leave. Only Jane looked at the starry sky, not knowing what she was thinking. On the S.H.I.E.L.D. side, Director Fury immediately felt an inexplicable sense of panic after learning that Norse mythology was not mythology, especially when a living god appeared before him. After all, the only information available can prove that Thor alone can easily destroy a country, not to mention that above him is the god King Odin and a large number of Asgard soldiers. And according to the known information, Asgard's technology is far more powerful than theirs, so once Asgard invades the Earth's chance of winning is 0. This sense of crisis forces him to start studying countermeasures. Director Fury is worthy of being the king of agents and quickly came up with a solution. Since their existing technology cannot compete with Asgard, he will use some products that are not from the Earth to develop a powerful weapon. The power of this weapon must be so great that it can easily destroy a planet or a galaxy, which is equivalent to a nuclear threat on Earth. With this weapon, not to mention colonizing alien planets, at least self-protection will be no problem. However, Director Fury was at a loss as to where to start. At this time, Coulson came over to report Captain America's situation. When Director Fury heard the word Captain America, a light bulb went off in his head. He remembered the laser weapons that had caused great suffering to their allies in World War II. These weapons were developed using a mysterious object called the Cosmic Cube. The technology of World War II was enough to develop laser weapons that were decades ahead of what was available on Earth. So with their current technology, shouldn't they be able to develop a weapon of immense power? Thinking of this, Director Fury immediately ordered his men to begin secretly studying the Tesseract. At the same time, Fury called in Dr. Eric Shavig, who had a good understanding of cosmic magic and knew about the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. Although Dr. Eric Shavig was very reluctant, studying the Tesseract was one of his wishes, so he had no choice but to say goodbye to Jane and Daisy and enter one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret bases to begin studying the Tesseract. However, Director Fury still felt that it was not appropriate. In order to find ways to enhance the strength of the Earth, he had to launch a plan called the Avengers. Director Fury was sitting in his office with a folder titled Avengers List in his hand. There were several names in it, but he had crossed them out, leaving only one, that is Captain America, Steve Rogers. He rose to prominence in World War II, had been injected with super soldier serum, and his character was beyond reproach, so when he launched this plan, Steve Rogers was the first member. Below him was Lee Chinyue, but his name was crossed out. It seemed that Director Fury knew that it was wishful thinking to want Lee Chinyue to join his plan, so he crossed out his name. The next one is Tony, but although Tony's personality has changed, he still looks nonchalant, so Director Fury has put him on hold. If he really wants him to join, he must go through some tests. Next came Hawkeye Clint Barton, Black Widow Natasha and Agent Coulson. However, he thought about it for a long time and finally crossed out Coulson's name. After all, Coulson is best at diplomacy and is not suitable for fighting. There are a few relatively unfamiliar ones later, such as Frank Castle, Banner Bruce, Daniel Thomas Landkey, Luke Cage, etc. The names of these people were also crossed out because they were either too young to take on important responsibilities for the time being, or they were unstable. For example, Banner Bruce's ability was extremely unstable, and he might even hurt his own people if he wasn't careful. Of course, there is also a killer among them, that is Frank Castle, the famous Punisher. He is an anti-hero. If he joins the Avengers, it will probably conflict with Steve Rogers' ideas, so he cannot join. In this way, after deletions and reductions, the final list is confirmed to have only 3 people: Steve Rogers, Captain America, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. After deciding on the candidate, Director Fury went straight to Steve Rogers. In a boxing gym in Washington, it has been closed, but it was bought by Steve Rogers and used as a place to vent. After all, for Steve Rogers, he just woke up from his sleep and found that 70 years had passed in the world, everything had changed, and he also missed the most important dance. All of this made Steve Rogers irritated. As a sandbag was knocked away, Steve Rogers didn't say anything. He just picked up a new sandbag and hung it on top and continued to hit it. As each punch became bigger than the last, after only 10 punches, the sandbag was knocked away again. What's wrong? You don't seem to be used to it yet. Why are you here? Come to recruit you, the veteran, said Director Fury. I'm out of fashion, and now I just want to live the normal life I once wanted. Steve Rogers said without looking back. Someone wants to see you. Director Fury sighed. Steve Rogers turned around then. He didn't know who wanted to see him. Suddenly he thought of something and became silent. He followed Director Fury and silently came to the medical department of the Triskelion building. He opened a VIP room where a white-haired old man was lying. When Steve Rogers saw the old man's weathered face, he held back his tears and lowered his head. He quietly sat on a chair beside him and looked at the photos on the table. You're here, Steve. The old woman slowly opened her eyes, but when she saw Steve Rogers, she subconsciously wanted to hide her face, but due to physical reasons, she remained motionless in the end. Yes, I'm here, Paige. You should be proud of yourself. That's right. The old man is one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Steve Rogers' ex-girlfriend, Peggy Carter. At this time, Peggy Carter also noticed Steve Rogers' gaze. She followed his gaze and found that he was looking at a photo of his family. She said, I have lived a lifetime, and my only regret is that you didn't live your own life. After hearing this, Steve Rogers slowly lowered his head. Peggy Carter smiled slightly and asked, What's wrong? My principle has always been to do the right thing, but now I seem to have lost track of what is right. I have thought about returning to the army, obeying orders, and defending the country, but everything is different now than when I joined the army. After hearing what Steve Rogers said, Peggy Carter couldn't help laughing and said, You're still the same as before, always talking so exaggeratedly. You saved the world and we messed it all up. Don't talk nonsense. A big reason why I haven't completely returned to ordinary life is because I know that S.H.I.E.L.D. was founded by you. Peggy Carter took Steve Rogers' hand, placed it on her stomach, and held it with her hand and said, The world has changed, but we can't change it back. We can only do the best we can, and sometimes, the best choice is to start over. After saying this, Peggy Carter began to cough. Steve Rogers quickly brought her a glass of water, but when Peggy Carter finished drinking the water, her expression changed. She became aggrieved and her expression was not as stable as before. Steve. It's me. You're still alive, you're back. It's been a long time, a long time. Peggy Carter said in a crying voice. How could I leave my love? I still owe her a dance. Steve Rogers said quickly. The two chatted for a while until the doctor came in and said that Peggy Carter needed to rest. Steve Rogers then shut up and held Peggy Carter's hand to accompany her to sleep.